thought about visiting Finland? If you have, chances are you've also thought about seeing the northern lights, perhaps eating reindeer meat, or enjoying a sauna, or sleeping in a glass igloo hotel. These are, no doubt, some of the attractions with the brightest colors in the tourist pamphlet, but there is more to Finland than just that. One of the first things you'll notice when setting foot on Finnish soil is that most road signs are written in 2 languages. This is because Finland is officially a bilingual country. Swedish is spoken by a little more than 5% of the population in Finland and make up for a minority called fenno-Swedes. The Swedish-speaking minority is mostly based on the coastline of Finland, all the way from Pyttis up to Karleby. And so in this series I will take you through the Swedish-speaking parts of Finland, showing its sights and attractions, because every language comes with a culture. National Road number 8 stretches from Åbo all the way up to Limingo, just outside of Uleåborg. This European route, E8, continues onward all the way up to Tromsø, Norway. But for the time being, at least, we're only going to stick to the Finno-Swedish parts of western Finland. A little bit off the road, but still along the west coast, we'll start with Cidu, a small village right at the southern border of Ostrobothnia. A village with a population of less than 200 permanent residents might not seem like a definite place to stop while on a tourist hike through the west coast of Finland, but there's more than meets the eye here, as history tells the place has not been quite so insignificant in the past. A monument that attests to this is the bell tower of the church, Cidu Klockstapel. It is designed by Carl Ludwig Engel, a German architect whose work can be seen in central Helsinki, has the Senate Square and the buildings surrounding it. The Cidu bell tower was erected in 1831 and was designed to fit 3 bells, one for men, one for women, and one for children. This is as to follow the tradition of ringing for the dead, where the first bell to sound indicates for whom the bell tolls. At the foot of the tower, next to the main entrance, stands a lonely pauper figure with his hand reaching out, hoping for a coin from a more fortunate soul. Pauper statues are quite common in Finnish Lutheran churches. Often carved out of wood, they serve as almboxes for charitable causes. Another tall construction in the area is the lighthouse of Yttergrund. This construction was also built in the 19th century and is the second tallest lighthouse in Finland, after Bengtskär. The lighthouse stands in the center of a small island, Yttergrund, or Outer Skerry, and is therefore sadly only accessible by private boat. The village of Cidu is an old fisherman's village where we used to have ships built, a lot of ships, a lot of huge ships, brigs, schooners, galosses, which were used for trading in the Baltics usually. The harbor still has lots of old little boathouses and fishermen's cabins, like this one for instance, which seems to have been for sale or something because there's a little piece of paper there. People still come here to tie their boats and build their own boathouses. As you can see, there are some new boathouses built here. The harbor of Cidu is located in Kilen, which is also a museum. The museum exhibits life as it was in the 19th and even 18th century, how people lived. It even has an old telegram museum that exhibits old phones and cables and telegraphs and stuff that used to communicate back in the day in these very areas. Everything in the museum, everything in this area is from these particular parts. And you get a good glimpse into the everyday life of a normal fisherman from these times. But it's very, very nice to walk around here and look at old buildings Like, for instance, this building, which looks like not much, it is an old windmill. The actual mills broke and have not, sadly, been restored since then. But let's go check out what the museum has in store for people who want to know what life was like here a few centuries ago. Fransgården, the biggest and the first house that was ever moved here to Kilen's hembygdsgård. This is the farmhouse, which represents a daily farmhouse back in the 19th century. It was moved here, I believe, in 1968, and all of Kilen's hembygdsgård was open to public in 1969. Come on. The place has tapestry, which is hand-painted. It features a phone, which was luxury in those days. This is, of course, not from the 19th century, but this is the kitchen area of the gigantic farmhouse. This farmhouse is very big, and so is the kitchen area, as you can see. The tapestry is hand-painted, original, untouched. This is how you used to hang up your dishes back in the day. No IKEA here. And the stove is magnificent. You could probably cook a whole pig in here. Except people didn't really eat pigs in those days. They ate fish mostly, since this is a fisherman's village. But it's huge, like the whole kitchen. And look at these keys. That's a great squeak. This is the 18th century house. It's the oldest building in the Kilen hembygdsgård. It used to be a smoke cabin originally. A smoke cabin is a cabin with a fireplace without a chimney. The smoke never left the house through normal ways. You used to have little ventilations in the ceilings that sort of brought the smoke back in, and it heated up the house, which meant that during the daytime you'd have a fire in the fireplace. You heated the cabin during the day, and for the night the cabin was warm throughout the night. How healthy it was to sleep in, smoke. A smoky environment is debatable, but that's a story for another time. And here's one of the inhabitants of this house. Where'd you come from? Everything in this house, okay, take it easy, honey. Everything in this house, except for the bird and and these, are from the 18th century, and they represent stuff that people used, in everyday life in those times. Henriksdalshuset, another one of these houses that were donated to Kilen's hembygdsgård by various villages around the neighborhood. This house and all of its stuff inside has been donated and assembled by the local Martha Association, which I think is pretty darn awesome, including this library, which is what they call it, but this assembly of books. From the late 19th century. This swing, whoever this swing was made for, that child must have been very lucky. I don't think people in those days, could afford to make this kind of stuff. But look at this, like up here where you keep your spoons. And look at all of these little details. You remember that Bond movie where they say, "Take him to school"? This is not what they meant, but this is the Kasaböle Swedish school. This school used to be active from 1898 until 1967 when they decided to donate the school to the museum, which was a nice feature. Here you see the whole Finnish map. Let's see if we can find where we are. Yeah, we're right there. It even lists Cidu. Well, the map of Finland hasn't changed that much. Actually, it hasn't changed at all. I'm sure these globes are a bit outdated. Let's see. Belgian Congo. Cape Land instead of South Africa. There we go. And of course, like every Finnish school classroom, you'd have pictures of your general heroes. Usually not sports heroes, but in this case, you know, Paavo Nurmi, Hannes Kolehmainen, and Martin Luther, Zacharias Topelius, Johan Ludvig Runeberg, and a library. Let's see what this is. This is a book about Japan from 1904. Man, isn't that something? There's a lot of cool stuff in these bookshelves. Outdated, but cool nonetheless. Oh, Pippi Longstocking! This is amazing. This was a rebellic book that at some point was prohibited in parts of Sweden by certain politicians because it was so rebellic. Well, it's time to pick up and leave Cidu and be on the way to our next destination, Kristinestad. But first, we'll stop by a fish farm right outside of Cidu, Rågården, or Rogolin in the local dialect. This place has been in the family for generations, and business is blooming here as fish is both exported to towns and locals and semi-locals come from miles away to get fresh fish here. During seasons such as Christmas and Midsummer, the demand for fresh fish can be so high customers have to order theirs weeks in advance. But this place also has something to offer the one who's not that into fish. Besides fish, these guys are also into motors and different kinds of vehicles. And this is quite a motor museum. It has a lot of history. I don't even know what half of this stuff is. So many engines, so little space. And yet this warehouse is pretty darn large. I believe because of the space, or lack thereof actually, it is fully authorized to walk between these these engines to get a closer look at what's in store here. Wow. A lot of these engines are donated by people who have in fact used these. This is a luxury tractor. There's no entrance fee for this place. People can come and go pretty much as they please, which is sort of tradition here. Kristinestad. also called the Pearl of Ostrobothnia, was founded in 1649 by Count Per Brahe. The name is said to have been given to honor the memory of his late wife, Kristina. What's fascinating about the town is that it has never suffered any major damage such as fires, and so the original city plan has remained nigh unchanged. Many of the streets are paved with cobblestones and surrounded by old wooden houses, and the city plan includes many alleys and beautiful inner yards. Today, among the 6,500 permanent residents here, Swedish is spoken by 55%, but people whose first language is neither Swedish or Finnish make up a staggering 4% of the total population. Internationally, the town bloomed in the 19th century with its deep water harbor, which made national and international trade possible. Trade is more scarce today, although in mid-July, the annual summer market of Kristinestad can bring as many as 60,000 visitors from all over the country. In 2011, Kristinestad joined the Cidu Association. It was the first town in Finland to join. The concept of Cidu is explained by the association as the main goal of Cidu was, and still is today, to enlarge the philosophy of slow food to local communities and to governments of towns, applying the concepts of eco-gastronomy and practice of everyday life. Municipalities which join this association are motivated by curious people of a recovered time where man is still protagonist of the slow and healthy succession of seasons, respect of traditions through the joy of a slow and quiet living. I have to say, it's very cozy here, even when the wind picks up and it starts to rain. Well, these cobblestone streets soon take me to one of the main attractions of this town, what was once built to serve as the pillar of society over 300 years ago, the Church of Ulrika Eleonora. This is one of the oldest buildings in all of Kristinestad. The Church of Ulrika Eleonora was built in the late 1600s and first opened its doors to the public in 1700. It was then said to hold seating places for 500 people. How on earth that is possible, I have no idea. Perhaps people were more petite in those days. According to the website of the parish itself, it's said to hold seats for 400 people, which makes a bit more sense. The colors inside this church are pale and fading, as if someone's kept busy scraping the paint off all of the surfaces in here. In the early 18th century, following the Great Northern War, most objects of value had been moved to Sweden or stolen in raids. And so it was decided that the interior of the church was to be painted all in white, in the spirit of the modest way of the Protestant Lutheran Christian life. All previous paintings disappeared under a thick layer of white paint, even the painting in the ceiling symbolizing God. In the late 1960s, this paint was scraped off, revealing the original paint. By then the church had stood abandoned for nearly a century. The church is not heated, which means that it only has its doors open in summertime. It is actually quite cool inside here at the moment. There is no electricity in this place, which makes it very much like I would imagine it was in the seating rows are numbered, so that's number 1, this is number 2, and although this looks like number 5, it must be number 3 in logical order. So here's where you would have sat in order to see your Bible and be able to read. You stuffed these little things with candles, and then you sat here. And apparently some people thought it was very boring to sit in church, as they've been carving initials and names and messages into the wood here. There are stories being told that the tower of the church is leaning because the Russians tried to tear it down using rope during the Great Northern War. It may be difficult to tell if the tower even leans, as the whole church is built on a slope and renders it impossible to keep witnesses inside. Well, let's move on to another time and place in history. The merchant house of Lebel. Kaspar Lebel, or Kazimierz Żubowski, was a Polish war prisoner, released and given the right to trade here in Kristinestad. His family quickly became wealthy by trade, and the house is filled with old artifacts and interior design from the 18th and 19th century. What differentiates this museum from others is that it's not a museum. It's actually a cafeteria / museum. You can sit here and enjoy a cup of coffee or two with something sweet on the side in one of the many rooms of the museum, all in the spirit of the past, while looking at centuries-old artifacts, cool stuff, paintings, and even a private photo album. These costumes are so much better than any Instagram filter.